So here's the thing about body image in Bojack Horseman. There's a constant thread throughout the entire show, though it isn't really at the forefront of any episode, regarding self-hate and its connection to body image issues, where there are several characters in the main cast who struggle to accept their appearance, fear social exclusion and abuse, and even harm themselves to keep their body within so-called acceptable standards. I'd say the most obvious depiction of this being Bojack's mother, Beatrice. When we finally get context for what Beatrice's childhood was like, we get an abundant amount of examples of how her sense of self was shaped by her upbringing, and the lessons her mother and father instilled into her as a child. In the old Sugarman place, she's denied pancakes, ice cream, and pretty much anything yummy because those snacks are solely allowed to be supplied to boys. Girls and women must keep themselves thin and therefore beautiful to have worth in this time period, as they only gain it when they marry a worthy man, and for that to happen, apparently, you have to be stick thin. And it doesn't matter how young they are either, these lessons are instilled into young girls from day one. It is honestly tragic to just watch this child be denied sweet things that they deserve to have. Times Arrow only provides more context about this idea, where her father, Joseph, often commented about her weight while she was growing up, from the time she was a young child. She was ridiculed at school for being chubby, she was given passive-aggressive advice from her parents about it, she never got to hear the end of this kind of talk, which I think is a great representation about how unavoidable criticism can be for those who don't adhere to the beauty standards that American and European societies push as sexy and acceptable, as in those circles a lot of value is placed on one's weight or how thin they are, and don't tell me that it was never actually pushed, because I mean even the early 2000s were a mess for women's fashion and modeling. Everyone was so freaking skinny, showing off their waists and their low-waisted jeans, and I'm not even gonna get into the whole black women not being allowed to have afros thing. But these documented trends are across American culture and time, and we can see how they affect Beatrice over the years. Of course, things have definitely improved, but there's still for sure a stigma against those who are overweight, or even just not super skinny, really. Even a healthy weight sometimes is seen as unattractive. Doctors are often dismissive of issues and are quick to attribute everything to a weight issue, often not really listening to patients when they voice their concerns. I've heard a ton of different people discuss this. People on social media are still rather critical of celebrities and scrutinize changes in weight, and in public, generally, more positive attention is still given to those with a slimmer waist. It can often feel like everywhere you turn, there is someone criticizing you for your body and how you look. It's almost impossible to state how destructive that is to someone's self-esteem and how much damage that will do to their sense of self-worth, tying so much of it to their weight, to their appearance, ultimately really setting them up for failure later in life, because it doesn't get better for Beatrice over time, sadly, as the mistreatment only continues into her teenage years, with her father desperately trying to marry her off to a proper man, as, again, women at this time are perceived to be of no value without a man at their side. Unfortunately, now this mindset has become sort of ingrained into her as second nature, where she asks the maids to fetch her pretty pills with little thought. It's as if it's a habit for her at this point to simply utilize these extremely unhealthy methods, although I'm sure at the time they were advertised as A-OK, to keep herself as slim as possible, as presentable for that time as possible, because she needs to be shown off to the men, which is, oh my god, so disgusting. Even though she is beginning to learn more about feminist and progressive culture from her time at university, it really shows how deep down these teachings go and how difficult it can be to reverse or unlearn them. I mean, it's not just the thought of her feeling the need to take these weight loss pills that makes me sick, but also the fact that they're literally called pretty pills, insinuating that the only way to achieve prettiness or beauty is to lose weight and be as thin as possible, not eat, not be healthy. And the fact that this message is present everywhere this woman turns in her life is horrific to me. Like, she is literally preparing for a party to present herself to the masses as if she's some prize or object to be won. It is sickening, and it really leads to some issues later in her life, because I firmly believe that this is one of the major things that led to the perception she holds on to, that she was ruined by having Bojack, that she'll never be able to be as beautiful as she was due to how her body has changed, even though that's not remotely true. After all this time being told that she had to be free of imperfections, she can't can't accept herself post Bojack's birth. Add into that fact that her husband has largely disregarded her and pays no attention to her, instead perpetually finding younger women to fill his time, only pushing that ideal further down into Beatrice's psyche. The world, from her point of view, only proved her father and all those other men right at every turn, because as soon as she had a child, she lost her value. The man she thought would love her for the rest of her life turned away from her and kept finding someone else, someone, from his perspective, more beautiful, more pretty, younger. I feel like I'm describing that you should use the substance.
Have you ever dreamt of a better version of yourself? Younger, more beautiful, more perfect.
So that then she even perpetuates these teachings onto another generation of women, subtly forcing Hollyhock to take weight loss supplements until she eventually faints, passes out, and lands her in the hospital. I mean, even before this incident, she makes subtle comments to Hollyhock, insinuating that she could be beautiful if she was thinner, if she ran more.
You are so beautiful.
You could be thin, too. Just go easy on the sweets, and when you go somewhere, don't walk. Gallop.
Ice cold, Grammy Graham.
You could see that even as her mind is not at full clarity, she really believes these things that she was taught and carried them with her right to her deathbed. It's honestly so tragic that she never really realized her own worth as a human being, that nobody truly got to see her as beautiful, as Corbin Creamerman never got the chance. I know what she meant, after Bojack explained it in Free Churro when Butterscotch died and she declared that her life was worse now, because really, he was the last chance, from her perspective, for a man to see her as a beautiful woman and help her find her own value. He was never going to do that because he was emotionally removed, but it was the last possibility. Really, Beatrice is such a realistic, tragic figure where, yes, she was painted as a monster for most of the series, but she really was a product of traditional values failing her on every front, creating this bitter person who is really not satisfied with her choices or her own body, even. And because of that, she lashes out, is rude and abusive to pretty much everyone else in her life because she's uncomfortable in her own skin. Thankfully, we see that Hollyhock doesn't really suffer too much long-term damage with regard to her perception of herself. In college, she's definitely more self-assured and doesn't seem to show any signs that she's uncomfortable in her own skin, at least from what we see of her. We don't get that much context, but it is well stated in the show that her 8 fathers are very, very capable and often have great emotional advice, so I am very positive and confident that Hollyhock is comfortable with her appearance and satisfied with herself, which is great to see because in season 4 there was a little bit of worry in that regard after the whole situation with Miles and him not actually liking her and offering to never talk to her again if Bojack would just give him a chance on his script, so not really having any interest in her and just using her to get closer to Bojack made her feel as if she wasn't worthy of a handsome boy sweeping her off her feet, made her feel as if she wasn't beautiful, especially because Bojack called her a blob. But Bojack does, correct this and apologize for it rightfully later on. But there is still a little bit at the end of the episode of a tense moment where we see that she might have taken a little bit of this to heart. However, I'm glad that season 6 didn't really go back to that because it shows that she kind of moved on from this period. I mean, maybe not entirely. You don't really just get over stuff. It's not how it works, but I feel that Hollyhock was in a much better place in season 6 than she was in season 4. Even in season 5, she feels comfortable, she feels like boys like her, she's having a great time in college, she's doing what she wants to, she's not apprehensive about eating food in general. It's great to see. However, Beatrice and Hollyhock are not the only examples of body image issues that we see in this show. We also see this idea tackled with Diane in season 6. In Face of Depression, Diane states that she doesn't want to go on antidepressants even if her therapist believes they could help her to feel better, because she did it once before in college and ended up breaking out in acne and gaining weight, and if those things happened, she's worried that Guy would not stick by her side, would lose interest in her, because even though she is a staunch feminist and understands body positivity and preaches it for sure, Diane has suffered through being a social pariah, being hated, being ridiculed for most of her life, and thus feared placing herself back into that role she had in high school in any way, even if in reality, her gaining weight doesn't make her any less acceptable, or having more acne make her any less beautiful or presentable, despite the fact that she rejects society valuing those things in the first place and tries to move past those traditional sensibilities. It's really difficult to apply those sort of lessons to yourself, practice what you preach sort of thing. I'm not saying she's a hypocrite, but, it is much harder to accept yourself than to tell other people to accept themselves. Case in point being me. And she also does not have a high sense of self-worth, it's worth stating, thinking that her true personality will push Guy away in the end anyhow.
We're probably gonna break up soon anyway. There's only so long before he gets tired of the real me.
The real you being...
Ta-da!
So that forces her to put even more pressure on her physical appearance to make herself feel worthy enough for Guy in the first place, even though it will never compensate for how terrible she actually feels about her own personality, about her own self, and really even her body at this point. Even though it's more acceptable by society's standards, Diane doesn't really feel good about it. As she's never really shown to compliment herself ever in this show, or feel generally extremely confident in any scene, as well as she doesn't really take great care of her own body, smoking a ton of cigarettes before she goes on antidepressants, things like that can tell you that she doesn't really value herself. When Bojack is able to convince her that not getting help, choosing to stay in this depressive state, only does more harm and takes away valuable time she could be spending living life, she is able to move past this perception and understand that it's better for her own health, for her own self-image, for her to just take antidepressants, to do what is recommended by her psychiatrist. And then when Guy finally returns from his work trip, Diane has gained the weight that she did fear as a side effect from the medication, but yet we see her more happy and fulfilled than we have ever seen before, greeting Guy with a light giggle and a wide smile and a realization that Dawson's Creek was always bad, showing how much of a better place she is in mentally and how much more comfortable she is with herself. She doesn't feel the need to be negative, to insist that Dawson's Creek got bad because she took antidepressants. She's realizing things about herself and really finding her own value here. And it was a journey that I really appreciated seeing, even if it wasn't a super long one. It really only takes place over Face of Depression. She does admit, though, in Angela in season 6, that she finally feels like the pieces of her life fit together. Like it finally all makes sense to her. She's comfortable with who she is at that point, and that includes her physical appearance. She still sees herself as beautiful, as Guy does, and though she doesn't look the same, she's accepted the change and still feels gorgeous in her own skin, which she is. Goes a long way to show how gaining weight doesn't have to be seen as an inherently negative thing. Diane is still beautiful, still with a man who truly cares for her, and is even more healthy than she was before she put on the weight, not smoking packs of cigarettes a day to calm her mind, or spiraling into self-loathing and tearing herself down at every turn. You really gotta give this show credit, too, for no other character mentioning Diane's weight gain or ridiculing her for it, at all. Not even once. There's no jokes about it. She addresses it herself, but nobody else has any rude comments about it, because they all know how much better she's doing. Why would anyone want to try and tear that down? Oh, I forgot, because people love tearing other people down on the internet. There is definitely a bit of an adjustment, as we see in Good Damage, where that one store, Trauma, doesn't label clothes with numbers and thus makes it difficult for Diane to find a size that fits, and is then berated for trying to put a number on her body, quote unquote. Girl, are we supposed to be pretending that people aren't different sizes? That's not progressive at all. It's about accepting people of all sizes, not ignoring that we have differences in the first place. I thought we've been over this, guys. We also get a glimpse of this idea through Sarah Lynn. We see the effects of body image when someone is raised entirely in the spotlight through her eyes. She was always pressured to be successful, outperform herself from the year before, be cuter, be bolder, be thinner, that she never really got to truly enjoy her life for a long period of time. Although Although this line is in Bojack's mind when it's said, Sarah Lynn does state that during one of her tours, her mother pointed out every single carb she ate. She was hounded by this woman day in and day out, this stage mother, to constantly practice, constantly perform, constantly be perfect. She could never have fast food, and that was ultimately her last meal, as we see in that same episode. Because, again, she never really got to indulge in that type of stuff. She was a pop star in the early 2000s. The pressure she was under must have been absolutely insane, as it was for many real-life stars from that time. And she never really got the chance to just be a child or a teenager, and just live life because of these expectations that were always forced onto her. It's really heartbreaking to know how realistic this story is throughout Hollywood, where Sarah Lynn never even really wanted this life as a performer, was forced into it, never got the chance to choose, and then was put through hell because of it. She didn't get to eat sweets, have fun, or really let loose ever. And over the years, it definitely degrades her self-esteem to the point where she does not have much confidence in herself when we meet her at the beginning of the series. I mean, her body was essentially used as a prop by her mother, by the industry, for years on end, and then was discarded pretty much as soon as she turned 30 years old. She was taught that her only value is what she could do in the public eye. Her beauty, her cuteness, her likability, and in a split second, it's all taken away from her, leaving her with not much left inside. No value for her actual self besides what she could do on stage. The value that crowds gave her, because it's all she knows.
And because of all the changes that she's made to her body and her appearance and her persona, really, to stay within the public eye, she doesn't even recognize or feel at home in her own body anymore.
I mean, she straight up stabs herself after Andrew Garfield breaks up with her and declares to Bojack that it's pretty much too late for her to be saved in that same episode. Even after she turns a corner in the 3rd season, she really is always just on the edge of losing her sobriety again. Her entire house is filled with drugs and alcohol, showing that she was never really serious about her recovery, and suggesting that she never really gained that value in her own life, her own self, that every human deserves to feel. Because if she was really working to be sober, she would truly care about her body. You know, her body is a temple, but she rejects that sentiment. She doesn't feel like her body is valuable in any way anymore. That her, Sarah Lynn, as a person, as identity, has no sort of worth in being. But even though it is definitely extremely prevalent in the women of this show, as I have stated over the course of this video, and it is definitely important to specifically look at how women are put through different ordeals regarding physical appearance than men, it can also be observed clearly through Bojack himself. Body image issues and the expectations of society weighing on people's self-esteem is not a gendered issue. Everyone feels the effects of it, and Bojack is no exception. I mean, whenever we hear him describe his self-loathing, a ton of insults are levied toward his physical appearance. Right from the very first episode, Bojack obsesses over Princess Carolyn's perception of his weight and whether or not he has gotten fat. In the 90s, while he was on horsing around, much like Sarah Lynn was, he was valued heavily for his appearance, even getting a pinup of his naked self in his dressing room. He constantly admires his own physique, pumps himself up, and everyone really only supports the idea that he is hot shit. But after Horsing Around is canceled, Bojack suffers a severe depressive episode over the next several decades, and doesn't take care of his body as he did when he was in the public eye, losing that sense of purpose and that huge ego that he had while on the set of the show. And as soon as he is not the picture of the masculine image that is expected of us, you know, six-pack abs, strong arms, that V thingy, he tears himself down for what he looks like, even though it's stated by other characters in the show that he is apparently an attractive man. Hard to tell for us because he's a horse, though I doubt that would stop some of you. But once his body doesn't look like what every leading actor's does, he sees himself as less than, ugly, diving into all that criticism swirling around inside of him, coming from his shitty childhood and abusive parents who pushed their own insecurities onto him. I mean, in Stupid Piece of Shit, we see that his mind criticizes his food choices, his appearance, his body, pretty much every chance it gets. He really doesn't give himself a single break or appreciate any aspect of his appearance. It's all worthless. And then in the final season, it's revealed that he's been dyeing his hair this entire time to look younger. He's so uncomfortable with the concept that he has aged, that he's not the young dude with the six-pack anymore, that he clings to the one thing that is easiest to control. It doesn't require any work or change in his personality. It was extremely nice to see Sharona give him a more appropriate haircut, and to see Bojack gradually accept his new appearance and feel comfortable in it. He really does look snazzy with his new outfit and cut hair, and dare I say, even better and cleaner than his previous appearance. More handsome, even though his instinct once he sees that gray hair is to declare that he looks old. Classic Bojack. Overall, body image plays a huge role in Bojack Horseman, one that I hadn't really considered before it was suggested to me to make this video. Thank you to Downbeat Dialga for that. A lot of characters, as we know, struggle with depression and self-loathing. Not a secret. But what accompanies that is often a distorted sense of self, their appearance, and a resistance to accept themselves as they are and appreciate and value their own body. Instead, they tear themselves down at every turn, or turn away help for fear of changing their appearance to not conform to what society has considered to be generally sexy or more attractive. Ultimately, there's a great lesson here about loving yourself and treating your own body with respect. What beauty is subjective, okay? There's no actual rules for what is more or less attractive. It literally differs from person to person. Most of the reason the general populace trends in a certain direction is because of what mainstream media pushes. At different time periods, standards were completely removed from where they are today. I did my research on this. I do have a source below in the description if you want to check that out. But what's really most important is that you are comfortable with how you look. And if you do wish to, say, lose weight to feel more at home in your own skin, which is totally valid, by the way, just don't forget to appreciate yourself as you are anyway. There's more to being a person, to being attractive, than a flat stomach. So don't throw all of your eggs into that one basket, you know? Look at yourself in the mirror and find something to love about yourself, because there's always something to appreciate there. I can guarantee you that. But let me know if you agree in the comments below, and if you want to support us further, you can go to patreon.com at patreon.com/PosiTVty. That's PosiTVty to get extra content in the form of unedited essays and all these videos before they come out on YouTube. But the support on YouTube means a ton. Thank you for liking, subscribing, commenting, doing all of that wonderful engagement stuff, because you know it helps the algorithm. Please discuss further in the comments. Let me know what you'd like to see next. Again, this came from a YouTube comment suggestion, so you guys are fantastic at giving me video ideas, so hit me with them. I'll see you guys next time, and love yourself.